Okay, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Facilities Management and Transportation Committee to order. We have a lot on the agenda, and Dr. Christian needs to get over to another meeting that starts at 6 o'clock. So even though I know we have a lot, we're going to try to be mindful of his time frame. So we'll ask, is there any public comment on the agenda? Seeing none, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Christian to talk to that about the room usage in K-3.
Great, thank you for everybody's edification. Tonight is the Plymouth Township workshop, and we are on the agenda next week for the approval for the middle school project. So we'd like to be in attendance to answer any questions that they may have. First thing I'd like to talk about is our K-3 room usage and enrollment. We've been monitoring this. The district's been monitoring it for several years. In February, if you remember, I shared district enrollment number projections from Decision Insight, which were very similar to the Montgomery County Planning Commission from 2.5 years ago. And I wanted to provide the board an update because it's something that the principals and I watch very carefully. Presently, we are projected to have between 400 and 410 kindergartners. We are well on pace to achieve that. They're not all registered, but with our pending registrations, we're up to 380 kindergartners. So they are coming, and we will be ready for it. The challenge when you look at enrollment is one thing to get the number correctly. It would really be nice if they would be evenly distributed.
Yeah, right.
So that is a little bit of a challenge. What each of the elementary principals has done is completed a room utilization report for me. So they take a look at each one of their rooms and how they're utilized specific to our educational program. This includes regular ed classes, special ed classes, support services, special areas like music and art, all those different things, robotics, all the different things that are offered in our comprehensive educational program. So I'd like to talk about Ridge Park and Plymouth. And as you know, in 2017, the school district added multiple classroom additions to both Ridge Park and Plymouth in anticipated of growth. All of those rooms are currently being used. As enrollment stands today, and it's May, I realize that, we are able to house our students this coming fall in our K-3 buildings. However, we do, go ahead, Mel.
Are they being used as regular classrooms or any specialists in new rooms?
Combination, some regular classes, some specialists. For example, the current first grade at Plymouth, we needed to go to 8 sections last year. So we had to take one of the rooms to be used for that. So we really don't have many. We have a few in any of our buildings, too many people on a cart. When we do some guidance lessons over at Plymouth, that teacher rotates. The health lessons, that teacher travels, but the health teacher also has the entire gym. We don't have art on a cart, we don't have music on a cart. So there are different things you can do, and you know, Mel, as being a former administrator, there are different ways to be creative as you watch enrollment bubbles move through. So on top of that, just in case, so that's why I want to have the conversation, and I mentioned this in February, in case the bubble gets larger and the kindergarten's a little bit bigger, we need to add sections. We need to be agile enough. So what we have done is that we've had a preliminary meeting with Plymouth Township, and we'll be having one with White Marsh as well, in case we would need to use modulars. And so while those are not, they can sound somewhat intimidating, they really are, it's not a concern. I just want to be agile enough to move in case we need them for this coming fall. I can't go to Plymouth or White Marsh in August and say, hey, I need a modular here, because when you install something like that, and it would be temporary until we could decide what to do in all the buildings, you need to make sure that you have fire suppression, you need to make sure that your alarms and your PA system, clocks, everything is hooked up, and that it's part of the existing building. And what we would do if we would need them, and right now the only building I'm primarily concerned with is Ridge Park. If we would need them, then we would do that this summer, and then we would put together a plan of what we would need for a permanent structure within 24 months. So the challenge at Ridge Park is we will be adding, and just so everybody knows, we will be adding more than likely a third autistic support class at Ridge Park. So when you have that, you have a max capacity in that class of 8 students. That's PDE reg, and we need to abide by that. So normally in a regular ed classroom, we're teaching math and language arts and self-contained class, you'll probably have 20 to 23 students. But in our autistic support, we keep the class size very low so we can meet the needs of all the students with IEPs. When that happens, that does have an impact on the whole room utilization. Additionally, there is a possibility, we have 6 sections in each of our Ridge Park classes right now. There's a chance we would potentially need a 7th section in kindergarten. We don't need it yet, but we're watching the numbers and we'll continue to watch them as kids come in over the summer. So what does a modular potentially look like? So we have one there up on the screen. And there's a view. They must be ADA compliant. They must be within a certain distance of the building. They have to hook up to electrical. They have their own HVAC units. So you have climate control in them. I actually taught in one back in the 90s when I was working at Methacton High School and it was under a renovation. I thought it was great. We had,
I was about to say, teachers in them love them.
yes.
Until they're 30 years old.
Right, and this is not something we'd be doing for long term. I know we're over in, if you look over at Pembroke Middle School over in North Wales,
Right, and Gwynnor both have modulars that were there when I left.
and they're still there.
Still
I drove
there.
by over the weekend and they're all still there.
Yep.
So that's what the outside potentially would look like. This is one sample. And then when you look at
31.
a classroom picture, we would have all the same technology. Those are chalkboards. We would have dry erase boards. It certainly would have daylighting, speaker system, and everything that we would need to operate. That's really small. Let's make
They're
that
self-contained climate control.
self-contained climate control. So just some sample pictures there.
Are there bathrooms in them?
There are not bathrooms in them. And what we would do, Leslie, is that we would locate them in close proximity to in an area of the building where we can easily access bathrooms. You know, we still operate on a fob system, so we would make sure the doors remain secure. We would build an overhang that would lead directly to,
There were
and then we
railings.
would also fence in a general area around it so that we still have a secure premises.
Okay.
Good question. When we talk about potentially over at Plymouth, and let me just pull some pictures up here. At Ridge Park, we're looking at, I'm going to make this larger for everybody to see. This is Ridge. We're looking at potentially 2 areas. So if you are approaching the school, on the left side of the school, you have the kindergarten wing. And so the rectangle that you see at the bottom of the screen, that is our preferred site, should we need it at Ridge Park, right directly behind kindergarten, and then the students would have access to the building right at that area. As a backup, would be at the top section, which is over at the other end of the building, not our first preference. Our preliminary meeting with the township indicates that either spot would suffice. We cannot have it on the macadam, which is directly at the top of the building there, because we use that. That's a little bit of an older Google Earth map. We're using that as a parent drop-off in the morning. So one of those, the tree in the center there is no longer there. But we have a whole path. It's still a playground area during the day, but in the morning, it is a critical piece of our drop-off where we're able to fit 18, 19 cars in there so they don't back up outside onto Cars Lane and straight up towards the main street there. So that's at Ridge Park. Are there any questions from the board thus far?
And is the thought that this would become an additional regular classroom, or would this be for specialist classes?
These would be for specials. I'll work with Mrs. Carr on identifying what classes particularly go in there. It could be our robotics class that would go out there. It could be music. It would not be a first grade, second grade,
That's an
third grade
all-day
class.
classroom.
No, we try to have those all in close proximity to one another, and that's where the students are spending the majority of their
Right,
time
right.
together. It would be the more transient classes where they pick up their specials. Good question. Other questions? The second area that we're watching carefully is Plymouth. Plymouth is a little bit more of a challenge because we get many students out of our apartments at Plymouth. So presently, we do not need a 7th kindergarten class over there, but once again, We're watching enrollment in all of the sections. And should we need one in Plymouth, it's a little easier placement because we have the macadam area directly behind the school where our walkers come in. There's also a utility closet and door access right there. And so what we're informing the board and the public of tonight is that we'd like to get the process started, even though we had an informal meeting. We'd like to have the permits pulled so that if we need to act on them in the summer, we can do so expeditiously and make sure that we're ready to go for the fall. I would even tell you that I'm watching White Marsh very carefully as well. Right now, we're able to schedule everybody based upon our current enrollment and projected enrollment. But if the kindergartners keep coming and we start to swell and need a sixth section over there, we need to be able to move forward on it. These are not permanent fixes. We're looking, if it's 24 months, we're looking at approximately $50,000 a year per unit. Could be a little bit higher, maybe $60,000 a year. But while the school is building, the district is building a fairly large middle school, we need to watch this bubble that's moving through. You know, a great example is White Marsh right now. The current second grade class, which is part of that huge second grade class in the district, is 128 students. The first grade class behind them is about 94 students. The kindergarten behind them is about 91 students. So we need to watch and see what the kindergarten is. So as the bubble moves through, we need to see if it's going to sustain itself. So I can't recommend building permanent right now, but just in case we need it, we need to make sure. And this board has been always very good about not having people travel, making sure our teachers have their space so that our kids receive the optimal education. And I think having these in place, if we need them, for our special area classes achieves that. Is it ideal? No. Is it doable? Absolutely. And quite frankly, and I know from experience that you know, the climate-controlled setting in close proximity really works out well, and we should be able to achieve that goal. Sue, you look like you have a question.
Yeah, I do. When we talked about doing this years ago here, Joe, I'm sure you remember, White Marsh Township told us that even though we were putting it on the lot back here, which was already impervious, that we would need to go through land development. Have you had any conversation at all with Plymouth? And because then that gave us what, like a whole extra year to go through land development.
In our preliminary meeting,
I know this is Plymouth you're talking
Right.
about generally, but
They
no,
have not-
they haven't mentioned land development.
No.
Okay, because that nixed the idea for us. It was so cost
Sure.
prohibitive and time consuming.
Certainly. And we've been out, just so everybody knows, we have the principals and the administration, we've been communicating with the local daycares, with our communities about getting in and registering for kindergarten sooner rather than later. And so that's a good thing that we've achieved this goal, rather than, you know, when I first came to the district, I remember walking in late July and then early August, we had 30, 35, 40 kindergartners show up. And so, you know, we've always tried to stay as agile as possible, but getting the word out, that's a good thing to know how many are coming. It's a challenge when so many are coming, but it's a good thing to know the numbers are coming. Leslie?
It doesn't, as if the trend starts to reverse itself over a couple of years. Is that true? Am I saying that correctly? So that's why you're not thinking about a permanent solution?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We need to make sure it sustains itself.
Right.
This would be a stopgap, and if we need it, you know, people get nervous, and I'll use it, and we're on tape. You know, people say, "Oh, how about you redistrict?" And that can be a very concerning word in any district, because families are very attached to their existing elementary schools. Well, to redistrict, you need ample space to move many students. You don't just move 20 or 30 students. You know, when we redistricted in my last setting, we moved, you know, 800 to 1,000 students.
yeah.
You know, we were building a new school because of growth, and we were trying to get even capacity at all the schools. So there's not a place to put people. If we need something, it's going to need to be, you know, 2 years down the road, more permanent, and whatever, yeah,
But the
and wherever
predictions
it
don't,
is.
I mean, they're just predictions, I understand, but they don't seem to
Sure.
indicate that.
Sure.
That's good.
Okay. Other questions on that topic?
So do you need the board or the committee to make any recommendation?
No, just if you would give us permission to continue the permitting process. We had one meeting with Plymouth, and we're working with KCBA on making sure that we have all the documentation that we need. Since we're asking for one at Ridge, I think we should ask for one at Plymouth. It doesn't mean we need to act on it. It's good to have in case we do in June or July, and then we need to set something up. And should we need to move forward on it, I'll come back to the board and we'll come back at the June FMT in July if needed. We have about 4 months until the kids arrive again, but we know that'll be here in the blink of an eye. We'll meet with White Marsh too, just so we have, have all the questions answered. So we met, when we went to Plymouth, we met with the code enforcement and also the fire marshal and his successor, because Andy's retiring soon. So we really appreciated their time. It was a very open and candid dialogue about things that we would need to do. It was informal, but it gave us a good direction on what we have to do.
I would just have to repeat something I've been saying for 40 years. People will take out a broken record. And when we first started these demographic studies, I always stated that I think we're underestimating the number of kids who would come into the district through turnover of houses. I mean, I know, prime example is just on my little street, 3 houses went for sale. Sale signs went up last week, they're all sold.
Sure.
I mean, that's going on in Plymouth, it's going on in White Marsh, it's going on in Conshohocken. And especially the real estate agents are all advertising award-winning school districts. We're paying the price, we're being good.
If you build it, they will come.
Yes.
It's that's probably the most challenging piece of enrollment projections to predict. You can do new housing starts, you can look at birth rates, you can do all of that, but predicting the turnover is probably the most challenging piece in any school district. You have my promise. We still will maintain high academic programs. The board has made it very, very clear. We have very nice class sizes right now. We want to continue that, which is always a challenge in an affluent environment. And then obviously we need to meet the needs of our special education students with fidelity, and we'll continue to do that as well. I just wanted to have the conversation with you now so that should we need to act on it, we're ready to move as needed.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next on the agenda, we have the Colonial Elementary School roof. As you know, the board has already approved improvements to the existing Colonial Elementary School for the purposes of increased enrollment that's coming. We know that big second grade class will get here to 4th grade soon. So we're waiting for signed contracts, and then we'll have our first architect and construction meeting. And then plan is for them to start converting the rooms here to 5 additional classrooms in this building within the footprint as soon as school gets out. We are hoping simultaneously the board will also approve a new roof here on the elementary school. When it rains, and I still think we had a little bit of an obstacle course out there this morning. We've been getting water into the main lobby there. It's time to rectify that. So we have Jim Mangano and Jamie Lynch here. Jim is from Garland, and he spoke to the board last month, I believe, and we all know Jamie very well. If they would come up and talk about the roof project.
Hi, good evening. I have to apologize. I'm at 4 board meetings tonight. I'm going to get a call at 5:40 to say 3 things to another board, but I'm here. Mike, I don't know if you have access to the numbers that came in.
I do. If you give me 1 second, I'm not sure why it's not showing up.
So very quickly, and I think they are in board docs for everybody? Yes, they are. Okay, good. So very quickly, we got pulled into the roof here at the elementary school and quickly jumped on the roof and did a survey along with folks from Garland after Jim did a presentation before the board. I think it was last month. Confirmed a lot of things, saw the roof with our eyes really for the first time, and then quickly put together a design consistent with what Jim had talked about and what we saw that was bid to the U.S. Communities contract. And this all transpired very quickly, and the bids came in through Garland DBS on Friday. And you can see the numbers that are here. Aetna Roofing Corporation, if I'm reading that correct without my glasses, is in at $449.
Right.
And our numbers are all over the place, which is really indicative of just how busy the marketplace is right now. And here's a project that's being bid right before the start of summer, and certainly the numbers reflect that. But you have 4 very good firms who we've worked with time and time again, who I'm sure I've worked with Jim time and time again. And the system that has been put in place is really a belt and suspenders system for the lower T section of the roof. Everyone understands what that is. And so I got to see firsthand from being on the roof exactly what the challenge is, and it's basically a trough of water that sits up there on the roof, and we've got a system that's been designed, as I mentioned, belt and suspenders, that has a torch applied initial system that dries in the roof. Then you're building it up with the prerequisite insulation, and then it's got a garland system on top. So you've got a lower level that dries in the roof and an upper level that also dries in the roof. And I know Jim can go into lots more detail because of the flashings and that T-shape and that U that's up there. And you just see where mold is growing, where moss is growing, that roof is always wet, and it's just finding its way inside the building. So that being said, we could go with these numbers, which are slightly high, admittedly, for what we're doing, but there's no guarantee that if we were to rebid them, even if we did them outside of the Garland state contract, next year, for instance, that they would come in substantially lower. So it's really an accept or reject. I can't throw any weight off this airplane. This is as bare bones as I would suggest that we go, but it's no longer a really single ply, if you will, roof. You've got two systems that would go up there. We've got to do some work to kind of excavate through what's there and get to the drains, make sure that we connect to them. But that's what this solution implies. Certainly working under the Garland DBS contract, you're working with contractors that are certified by Garland. Garland would have their quality control folks on the roof as the roof goes in, and it would be very well documented. So Jim, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to impart.
The only thing I would throw in there is that when I presented last time, we had compartmentalized roof versus masonry issues. And so if you think about the lower masonry area where the flashings would actually be tying in to the solid concrete, okay, that's still part of the masonry component. With our values at minimum 30 now, so you know we have this much insulation on that right now. Now we're going up here, and then we're trying to move some of the water off the roof. I spoke about doing a redesign and just trying again to just put this thing to bed once and for all. By the time we got done doing all that, which I think is absolutely critical, the design that everyone came up with, I thought we got this thing nailed. We poured over structurals. I mean, we did everything to get to this point. But some of that masonry component actually became part of this. It had to. So because the flashing height, we actually have to build little knee walls and then raise the regular. So there is a component of that kind of beefed this up a little bit too. So there's a few little things that we had to add. That and the bidding climate, it's just been a challenge, but it's been a challenge all year. We've been getting killed since February with numbers. So it's just been a brutal year. And I don't see it changing anytime soon. I really don't. So that's where we're at. So, you know, we do a lot of work with that. They're an excellent company, and they went after the job. The good news is they've got room. They went after it. So, you know, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
There's a footnote here that says that the pricing includes the discount provided by Garland.
Correct.
What is the size of that discount?
$45,000. And that is a round number. I'm going to provide a spreadsheet for the staff, for Mike and for Joe and for Dave and for Jamie that breaks it out exactly so that that's documented as part of the thing. So that's not to the penny, but it's in that ballpark range.
I have a question. Is there a guarantee on this roof for so many years?
30. Yep.
Jamie, when you said the bids are on the high side, I mean, by what kind of magnitude? I mean, how much would sort of an average be in a normal market where it's not super
Like
competitive?
what percentage?
I was hoping to see a number that might start with a 3.
Okay.
High 3s, just under 400.
Okay.
It's a labor-intense job because of that odd roof shape. There's the tear off, there's the speed and the need for speed in order to get the first ply down and dry in the roof. Then it's also tying into the existing drains that are there. So there's a very labor-intense tear off new roof before we're dry, and then we have to put insulation in, and then we have to put another ply in. We've safeguarded all of those locations where the roof deck changes with additional reinforcing. So every step of the way, it's not a big, large area. It's a tight area, and wherever they go, they're going to be stepping on each other in order to put it in. So there's a lot. It's just, unfortunately, there's a lot of labor.
Sure.
When we talked about this last, we thought that the estimate would be around $400,000. So even though this is
Like
north of
10%
that.
more.
Right, it's north of that. We also looked at it in context of the bids to renovate the building, which came in around 1.7. So Dave and I were talking about being around that 2.1 to $2.2 million for the whole, everything all together. Our advice would probably be to have the board, the F&T committee, recommend to the full board a not to exceed number. Just in case, like when they open something up and you guys, wait a second, we need another $100,000. We don't want to be in that situation. If you were to say not to exceed $500,000, then they have to come back and have a conversation with us first.
That could happen.
I don't want to guarantee that that is not going to happen, but boy, do I sure hope it doesn't, because we're really working in a very small area. We know what the details were. If we have an issue up there, it has to do with the drains, the existing drains, and that's it, not like a
Okay, so that's
massive.
not-
We have unit pricing allowances for everything too. So that's included. So there's an opportunity for you to get money back. Probably, if everything went clean and neat, you could get the check back for $16,000.
It's not like you're gonna open up a wall and you have no idea what's behind it. I mean, it's
Right.
working. Okay.
Yeah. We've cut into it, and so you know what's there. Obviously, you can't. There's no X-ray vision, but we know what's there.
And Mike and Dave, do you have any estimates on how much money we've thrown at this thing to get to this point over the years?
We would need Terry to comment on that.
I think that, I don't know that has to stop us making a decision, but I think it's good to understand.
That's a great question.
Give some perspective as to what we're spending now and what was spent.
We can
Why
get
this is
that
worth
information to
doing.
the board.
I think so. That would be great.
You mean on various patchwork, things like that?
Lots of patchwork.
We're not seeing issues in the classrooms, but obviously we do have issues in the main lobby as people are coming in, and in the T portion after you come past registration, and we certainly don't want it to spread. So our recommendation, even though it came in somewhat high, our recommendation is to move forward with it as part of the whole. We're going to be in CES doing work this summer. We've already had a conversation about moving our ESY programs to other buildings, so that's all been scheduled, and we'd like to get this set up, and so we can move quickly as soon as school is over on June 13th.
It says
14th.
permits are excluded. What permits will you need for this? I mean, could that be costly, or are we gonna wait for us, or what's gonna happen?
If there's that's you probably
It's going through Whitewash, right?
Yes, usually it's just a contractor permit.
Oh,
I
okay.
can't imagine that they're charging some elaborate permit fee.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not like we're doing a new building.
Okay.
Yeah, at the risk of Joe not having years more of having to get buckets out in the hallway, I think it makes sense if we're already doing work on this building, as Dr. Christian said, to sort of address this. And it seems like the recommendations have been from all the professionals who've looked at this, that it needs addressing sooner rather than later. And we can see that when we walk through and see all the buckets in the hallway. I would much rather have this addressed, even if it's a little on the high side, and make sure it's fixed and done the right way. Just I think long term probably would be the best investment for everyone, rather than trying to continually patch.
So you need to go ahead from the committee?
Yes.
So Melanie, you okay with it?
absolutely.
Adam's okay with it, I'm okay with it. Okay. Thank
Great.
you.
And then our next topic, item C, is an update on the middle school finishes.
Hi, everyone. I'm here with Mary tonight. She's our head interior designer. We were out a few weeks ago, met with administration and most of the board. I saw the finishes. It was a really productive meeting. We really went through most of the materials, colors that are going to be in the new building. There were a couple adjustments that were asked for, but in general, most of what we had proposed was accepted. We've since gone to the White Marsh Township Day and had a lot of the images that we're showing you today there, so the community has gotten an opportunity to see these. And certainly, we make the images available to the district, and we encourage you to share them with the community, whoever wants to see the finishes. So Mary's just going to go through a few spaces real quick, just to refresh. Dr. Christian's going to.
Okay.
I'm driving.
All right, gotcha. What you're looking at now is the main entrance, exterior front facade of the building. And that's a mix of brick, metal panel, and pretty much brick and metal panel.
Yep.
And a couple different shades of that color. As you're looking here, this is your front lobby. So behind you would be the reception area. So you're sort of in the corner where the reception is behind you, and you're looking towards the entrance of the building. And as you walk in, we wanted to have wayfinding. So in that back corner, you'll have a map that shows where you go on the building. We're also going to have throughout the building different ways to wayfind in the building. So whether it be street names or some other type of wording, so that it's easy to make your way around the building is basically it. This shot is of the library makerspace. So it is a two-story. There's a classroom upstairs, and then the makerspace you see here on the right, and in the background is where the librarian's desk is. So there's an entrance behind you in this image, and then one up near the librarian's desk, and then also on the top classroom from that corridor, from the second floor corridor, there's also an entrance into that second classroom. This is the common space, which would be used by any of the ancillary classrooms that are around there. There's the tech shops are there, and art would use it. So again, it's really just an overall open space that people can schedule, teachers can schedule as they want. But again, we wanted to make this open, lots of natural light, inviting space. The next shot, I think, shows you a big presentation wall. We're making sure to have a lot of acoustics in the ceiling, and those walls, and the one that says Science of Today, that's all acoustic panels that would be a digital image on it, so that we handle the sound that'll come from that space as well.
Is that what you're thinking furniture-wise, that it would just be some couches and then?
I mean, that could be, that's a discussion that won't be part of the general contract, but that would be a discussion next for what you would want in that space. If you want that, you could have that, or you could have movable tables and chairs to make it more, like pull everything out, so that really hasn't been programmed yet. This is a shot from the back of the auditorium. So again, most of what people would see when they come in. So there's a large screen that comes down for any kind of presentations like that, and then just your, stage curtains. 720 seating capacity.
There's a ramp that I know can go right onto the stage to the left there.
Yes.
Does it go through a door behind the panels? Is that understanding correctly or not?
There's a ramp. There's a ramp
That's
to get you from the main level down to the orchestra pit.
Okay.
So you can go down any of the aisles to the front on a
Okay.
ramp. On the left side of that image, there's a walkway that's level with the floor. So
In the back.
the main floor is level with the stage, and that allows you to walk within the room without going on a ramp. So there's a railing along most of it, and then there's a portion there where there's a low wall, and there's also a stair there, so somebody can just walk up the stair. If they go down to the front,
I see, there's a little, I see.
there's a left and right stair to get onto the stage.
Yeah, so that back left-hand side of the image
That's a
is
little-
level with the back.
Right, no, that I know, I'm just trying to go behind something, I couldn't see.
Yeah,
that.
no.
I see. Okay, thank you.
This is a shot right as you're coming in the secondary entrance, which is where probably a lot of the parents might come when they're coming to a sports event or some kind of function in the theater. So right when you come in, we wanted to make sure we had, and this is partially the idea of some of the wayfinding and graphics that we would have at any of the main spaces. So you can see very clearly that the cafeteria is to your left and the gym is to the right. We want to take opportunity to use the logos as we can for school spirit. So let's make that shine. This is as you walk into the cafeteria. And again, where it says Future Dreams, that would be all acoustic panels. I think one of the changes from our original meeting was we had some pendant lights hanging from this two-story space and thought that might not be a good idea with middle schoolers.
Oh, really?
So we took those out.
And you changed the color of it.
And changed the color of the back wall. We did like a green color, so it's gold now. The front,
Oops, sorry.
to the right there, there would be a big area for presentation as well on the right hand wall there. This is the gymnasium, and it's showing with the divider curtain open, but where you see CMS, that's a skyfold partition that partitions this from the auxiliary gym. So that raises from, it goes up into the ceiling, that partition, and closes off the aux gym from the main gym. But this is the main gym showing with the bleachers out and that divider down.
Just want to make a point, I see it in there, and I know this isn't final, but we used to have an attorney on the board who was a copyright attorney, and we can't have the star in the Patriot.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right.
Just letting you know that,
Okay.
before it gets put up there.
Yes.
Before we have
Good,
everything.
we don't want it looking like the New England Patriots
We
anyway.
do not, nor do we want to get sued.
Because I think they had changed, didn't they? They changed how.
One time was something
We-
different, yeah.
I didn't know the stars.
We had it years and forever and ever apparently, and then they changed it and then went back to it. And the New England Patriots have never cared because we had it before, but it didn't have the star, and they said as long as we
Sure.
don't sell it,
Okay,
and as long as the star's not it.
okay, all right.
When do we have a conversation about the gym and how it can be used? Side courts for basketball, side courts for volleyball. We've talked about, we rent our space out to community members. But I've gone to so many volleyball tournaments where I know you can get a significant amount of teams in here and
Sure.
make some money for the school. Just wondering what our options are.
That would come, we should probably do that fairly soon as bid documents are getting ready because you want to make sure you have all the painting delineated and then any coring that you need to do in the floors for standards.
Yeah.
So, we have a
we
meeting
can
on
talk-
Wednesday.
We
so.
can definitely revisit it. We did have a conversation with the principals about it. Phil was really the one that was the main driver. There's a competition court in the center, and then there's two volleyball courts. So there's when the curtain's down, you have one on the left, one on the right. So there's, if you had an event, you could have two.
And then what about on the auxiliary gym?
The auxiliary gym isn't big enough to have the full-size volleyball court.
Okay.
So
In other
right
words,
now,
it's not a
we have,
full-size basketball court.
we have to strike for a half-court
Great.
basketball, but the volleyball isn't there.
And I think we have the posts for all three.
Right now,
For-
right, we have
right,
the
for the
posts
main and
for the three courts.
For three courts.
But if you want to adjust that, you can still look at it.
And we have scoreboards that are gonna be in there. We don't need a big fancy one, but I don't see a scoreboard
There's
anywhere.
definitely one on this
Showing
back
one
wall.
scoreboard, it's above your head in the shot.
Great.
And they also added those, the wrestling mats in this room as well on a
Oh,
lift.
great.
We put a lift, there's a wrestling mat hoist in both the
Oh, yeah.
auxiliary gym and the main gym for 2 mats in each room.
Are there any, is there bleacher seating in the auxiliary gym?
There's no bleacher seating in the auxiliary gym.
Okay.
And is there handicap accessible seating in this gym? I don't really see any of it.
Yeah, the bleachers are required to have a certain number built into the seats, and we're doing an alternate for additional bleachers. So you can see where these bleachers stop. We can actually fit more bleachers in here, so we're going to have an alternate for a higher number,
Great.
like from 500 to 800. And we'll have a price on bid day for that.
Great.
For the next 3 years, and it's not official yet, but we're leaning towards it strongly, of having the 8th grade promotion ceremony over in the new gym over at the high school. We've been capping parent tickets at 2 for a few years. We'll be able to get at least 4 or 5, if not 6 tickets per family.
Wow.
We had Bob came over the other day. We walked through the gym with RJ and Jason and Joe was there. We think it'll be a great setting. And that's the day after graduation, so we know about 250 parking spaces will be freed up. I don't anticipate the seniors will be coming back the day after graduation, but other maybe to stop in and say hello as they're driving to the beach. So
I heard from 2 8th grade parents today, that's the first I've heard of this, that were like super excited about it. They thought it was a great idea.
yeah, Bob had a good idea about just putting out a survey, get some interest, and I said, unless it's like 90-10 for some reason, then everybody would rather not. I said, I think it would be really neat, especially with the background. It's a great facility. It'll really show off where the kids, and it's commencement, right? It's where they're headed. They're starting their journey into the high school. So we're working out the details to get the 8th grade over here. It'll probably take place around 10 a.m. and then we have to get them out. We have to navigate dismissal because that's a half day too, but we'll figure it out.
Thank you for pursuing that.
Absolutely.
We can skip that one, Dr. Christian. That's
Excellent. Any questions on colors or scheme? We sent the board also email with a link that you can check everything. I think we're in really good shape. I think there was some consensus when we met at the green in the cafeteria.
Everybody like
meeting.
the
Yeah.
gold? Any problem with the gold? Yeah, I'm not super excited about it. But it's okay.
Great, thank you. Mr. Lynch, you're back up.
5:43, you done your call?
Yeah, they approved the Airedale unit ventilators at Monroe Career Technical Institute.
Great. And just, even though Jamie and I have to leave, if we have comments from the audience or questions for the board at the end, he'll make sure, Joe and he will make sure they get names of folks and make sure they give me their information so I can reach out to folks and respond to their questions.
I was looking through the glass, and I hope you enjoyed the colors that Mary and Jim selected. Mary's one of my favorite interior designers to work with. I just really like the color schemes that KCBA puts together, and Mary quarterbacks that, so it's a lot of fun. Quickly, on the middle school. So Plymouth Council, tonight we do workshop, and next Monday we do council approval of the middle school project with any luck. So that puts us in a frame of mind on let's get this thing started. So what comes first is once Township Council has approved the project, land development, stormwater agreements need to be executed and signed. So they'll get drafted right after approval. It's a very short time frame, but I'm sure the solicitors will work together on putting that together. We are awaiting County Conservation District approval for the NPDES permit. The good news is I think on Friday we got the administratively complete letter from Montgomery County Conservation District. That's a nice hurdle to get over. So now they'll just take the better portion of 3 months in order to get an actual NPDES permit to us. Access road easement agreements between the district and the township and the VOTEC are receiving edits. I understand they've been drafted, so they'll be coming through soon. That'll also be part of the land development agreement ultimately, and that agreement gets recorded at the county courthouse. There's a lot of paperwork to do. At the end of the month, KCBA will be submitting the building permit drawing set to the township for their third-party review. That'll probably take 30 days. So I imagine by end of June or so, we should see a building permit. The front-end specs that we authored are complete. They've been reviewed by the solicitor, and the only thing, well, there's 2 things that need to be amended there. One is the OSIP language based on your moving forward, and then also finally putting in the responsible contractor language as necessary. So if we scroll forward, sorry, it's not a PowerPoint. Project design and bid schedule. What we've done in the past month is modify the bidding schedule because those guys from Upper Dublin were ahead of you. And yes, our office is also working on that project, but we were due to receive bids on the 16th of July, and Upper Dublin was due to receive bids on the 10th of July. And what we would like to do is make sure that contractors are interested in both projects, so that when they don't get Upper Dublin, the big Taj Mahal that they're building, they sharpen their pencil for the beautiful and efficient Colonial Middle School. And they can put a number in after they hear the bid results of Upper Dublin. We also don't want the two projects to be on top of them for the myriad of subcontractors who are trying to put pricing together. So we've spread them a little bit. I worked with Dr. Christian and Dave. We're looking at your schedules, and I think we're accepting bids now on or about July 22nd or 24th, looking for a meeting with FMT, and then ultimately to get with the full board on or about, Mike, I think it's August 8th.
Correct.
Somewhere in there. Okay? What that does to us is it pushes our ability to start work probably into the school year. And when I mean start work, it's erosion and sediment controls and that big fence I keep talking about that separates the two sites. It can certainly be done with kids in school. We've done it before. We'll expedite that in our phasing. Project construction schedule essentially then remains the same. We have the alternate completion date out there in December of 2021. And all we've been doing over the past several weeks is, in addition to finishing the design, is working on the phasing. So we get all of these steps correct so that the new school can operate while the old school comes in. Quick solar update. We had a conference call last week, and we have another meeting next week. And the folks at Tangent Energy, who installed the first solar array on the middle school, helped us find the new contract holder for your power purchase, a company called Terraforma. And we had a conference call with them, and thanks to some accounting from Dave, we identified a little bit of what our options are. First, if we didn't want to move the solar panels, which are 10 years old, we could terminate the contract for a grand total sum of, sorry, I got a decimal where there should be a comma, $646,964, the healthy sum, right? Plus, you would have to add the cost of the existing panel removal, all right? So it's a healthy sum. If the panels are relocated and the current power purchase agreement remains intact, there will be charges for downtime of the panels while we relocate them. So you know that the energy provider is making money on generating electricity, and when he's not generating electricity, he's not generating revenue, and so there's a clause in the contract that says you have to pay some. The other option is perhaps, and we'll learn a little bit more about another meeting next week, I believe, a new power purchase agreement. This is interesting, and Tangent is going to help us with some of the metrics here, but the existing solar panels are 10 years old. There's certainly newer solar panels that have been made that are more efficient. The other thing is to remember that this power purchase agreement covers 3 buildings. The middle school is about half the square footage or half kilowatt hours that the other 2 schools are. So this is a big portion. Interesting things have been thrown out. Is there real estate available where ground-based panels could be installed instead? That would be interesting. There are many districts who have a piece of real estate and they've got ground-based solar panels that have been installed and generating power under power purchase agreement. What's the benefit? I don't have to put them on the roof of the new middle school. What's the downside? Steal what could be valuable real estate in the course of doing that. So we'll update you on this process. Where I'm headed with this is that the relocation of the panels and what we do is probably going to take us some time, bless you, to put together. And I would suggest that the cost for relocating the panels from the old to the new perhaps be pulled out of the middle school budget and set alone somehow as part of the power purchase agreement. I don't have a recommendation for you yet, but let's have a meeting again with the provider, and I can hopefully more distinctly outline the options for you.
You talk about what it would cost to just get out of the contract. Can you give us your best guess what we're talking about to move them?
So we included $325,000 in the middle school project for the building. So downtime, I don't know the number
Yeah,
for
you
that.
can.
So we'd have to find out. So, that's the next step. This is where we'd like to go so we can provide you with the information.
Where are the other two, which other two buildings have solar panels?
They're on this building, so they're up above the roof that we're gonna take care of this summer. They're on the high roof, and they're also at the high school. So between the high school and this building, we have as many solar panels as exist at the middle school. To be continued. More neighbor coordination. And this slide is fun only because on the right side is the backyard view from the kitchen of, I think it's 415 Park Avenue. That's a photograph on the right. On the left is a rendering created by ACBA to help the property owner understand what they'll be looking at once the new school is constructed. You can kind of see the scraggly tree that's right in the middle of the slide on both sides. So we had a very successful meeting, Dr. Christian and myself, with this particular resident who represented 3 or 4 residents in that area. And the fence that you see is a screen fence that would be on the top of the retaining wall that's on that end of the site. And the primary concern of the residents was not so much view, but some type of noise barrier for the things that happen down below, one of which is the loading dock. The other thing that you don't see in this rendering is in front of that screen, closer to his property line, will be a line of some 37 evergreen trees that will eventually grow up and be quite tall. So in using this slide with that resident, he was very satisfied and appreciated the board's consideration, the design team's consideration in hearing what he had to say and what his fears were. That wouldn't be a presentation from Jamie without some talk about project budget pressures. Just to sum up for you, a couple of things have crept in this month. The large diameter stormwater pipes that are existing on the site, they really convey a stream under Belvoir Avenue and over to the township property and then down the creek. You're probably familiar. Those pipes are corrugated metal pipes. But what's interesting is that they run in parallel. There's 2 next to each other. I don't know what the diameter is, but they're like 4 feet in diameter. And they run through extremely large manholes. They're not really manholes. They're basically chambers the size of a small living room. And what we plan to do is pile 3 feet of earth on top of them when we redevelop the site. So the civil engineer raised his hand and said, I'm a little worried about the structural integrity of these little living rooms, so what can we do? So in a couple of cases, we do have to bury a couple of those manholes, and we think we can do so. And what we've done and worked on even up until this week, you have a new softball field that's going to be on the site, and that softball field has been slightly relocated so that we have some slope behind the backstop that would go down, so I don't have to put so much fill on top of these manholes. So I don't have to tell you we have to replace 16 manholes that are on the site. So we're doing our best, but I need to incorporate something in the budget because there's going to be some stormwater manhole reconstruction. I estimate about 100,000, and that's all the way out in the last phase of the project. That's in the last summer when we're building the fields. Abatement scope and cost increase is about $200,000 across the project. We have roughly 45,000 square feet of tile removed from the existing building. I've gotten an estimate from the abatement consultant that identifies that my estimate was a little bit short, and I tend to agree. That's a contract that we're bidding later, though, not when we bid the construction project, because the abatement is 2 years out. So I'm trying to avoid the craziness of the market conditions now. I'll bid that later. We'll see how it goes. Solar panel work, there's my question mark. Do I take that 325 out of the budget and it's budgeted somehow elsewhere? OSIP, we're talking about tonight, a premium for the cost of the owner-controlled insurance program. Those market conditions and the impacts of bidding a project while another one of similar size is out there. That, all I can tell you is that they're budget pressures. I can't give you a number. I can't tell you what it's going to do to us. There are just numerous instances where between market conditions, meaning everyone is busy, and trade shortages that result. Maybe you've heard masons are very hard to come by right now. Masonry numbers are through the roof. Roofing numbers right now, as you saw tonight, are through the roof because everyone is so busy. So these are some of the things that I've been dealing with. If you flip to the next slide, this is the last project regarding market conditions came in just last week. It was the Quakertown Elementary School. That's about 80,000 square feet, half of which is new and half of which is renovation. It came in at about $244 a square feet. Remember that your budget is about $247 a square foot. And of course, we have Upper Dublin and Colonial head for dueling banjos here in the bidding environment that are coming. It's not changing. Contractors are busy. It's a tough time. I just can't pinpoint where we would see impacts that would make me suggest that we have to make wide-scale changes in your budget, but they're going to come and they might surprise even me. I think that was the last one. Oh, there's the thing. Questions, comments? There's my April 1. That should say May 6, sorry.
I have a question. I don't know where it will come up in the discussions. I know that the decision in the courts regarding the responsible contractors policy. So how is, I don't know how we proceed and how that also could be impacting the number of contractors who are eligible to bid on our project.
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah.
So it's concerning to me with current market conditions. The roof bid is a pretty good example because as we look at that bid, 3 of those bids were above the threshold. And I would have had to go with a responsible contractor policy had it exceeded your threshold of 500,000. Because those other 3 who had bids that were over 5, they were not, quote, roofing is one of those trades that doesn't have an apprenticeship program outside of the union's apprenticeship program. And so had all of them come in above the threshold, we would have had to reject and gone to a different contractor. And that's simply, the concern is what does the impact of that policy do as far as shortening the list of contractors who want to come and bid your project, and how busy are they now? That is just the challenge. We have 3 large general contractors who will be interested in this project who are open shop. I'm sure we have an equal number who are union. And putting that aside, it's all about the subcontractors. They're the ones who make it or break it. Either way, there will be union participation on the project. But I worry that you're limiting yourself with, and if a modification can be made, that's great, but that it is definitely a concern that could push it in a direction that would be budget detrimental. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing contractors on these bids that came in for Quakertown, I had 12 bids from HVAC contractors. The beauty of the HVAC contract is he knows that his work is not going to start for about a year. I need to get foundations, I need to get structural steel, I need to get a roof on the building. He doesn't have to start to work So his labor pool, he's ready for that job that's a year out. Same with the plumber. Electricians are busy now, but it's really the same thing. He's got a little bit of underground to do, and he's not doing anything on this job until later. It's the steel, it's the concrete, it's the guys who you need now that are a concern. Okay. I hope that did something as far as answering the question.
Thank you very much, Jamie.
Okay, thank you very much. Headed to the township.
Good luck.
Good luck. Jamie.
Okay, our next agenda item is we're going to revisit the owner-controlled insurance program. We did invite Sean Sable back to answer any questions that may have come up over the last month. If you remember, Sean did a presentation about the pros and cons of the OSIP program. Sean, if you want to just do a refresher, and then we can ask the board if they have any questions.
Thank you for having me back again. Once again, the OSIP is it's a unified approach to the insurances that you would generally get from the bidders on your project. And what we do is we extract those costs of insurance and instruct them to do that pre-bid. So when they remit their costs, they do not have the three insurances, which are workers' comp, general liability, and excess liability in the bids. And we say that this is a cost-effective project because what we do is we're able to band everyone together, take it to the insurance company and say, hey, we have a large construction volume, will you give us a rate? And what we say is our rate is about a percentage less than what we have seen in the marketplace, and they demonstrated that last time, what the contractors can provide, therefore giving you a savings of roughly, compared to the contractors, about a percentage of savings. So, any questions?
Any questions as a follow-up to last month? You can see on the agenda item that administration has talked about this quite a bit in the last month, and we are recommending that we adopt the OSIP program and that we go with the direct method. Our feeling is that given the size of this project and the length of this project and the fact that we're going to be covered with our own insurance program where we can control that and then have the extended coverage that we talked about last month, it has a lot of positives. And I even think what Jamie had talked about last month, that it's leveling the playing field for all the contractors. We think we're going to need as much help as we can get to level this playing field for all contractors, being where we're at in our own construction derby going on here.
I don't understand. So when you say leveling the playing field, does that mean each of the contractors are supposed to be going out and getting their own insurance? So
That's correct.
Right. So does this have anything to do with whether a contractor is union or non-union? Do they all have the same processes?
That's a great question. I don't know if a union
Just feel like the
shop
union
that
would
has
probably
the
have
apprentice
more
program would get preferential insurance treatment,
Right.
Versus somebody that might not have that apprentice program. Do you know any?
I mean, I don't have any hands-on experience with that. I mean, the general consensus is, my own personal experience is that, union contractors tend to work more in the city. Yes, no? I would say that their insurance rates could possibly be higher. Therefore, with the OSIP, we would therefore lower those insurance costs based upon the pricing that we can.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is, can we require the union, if and when we have the union win the bid, we can require them to use OSIP as the insurance? They're not going to say, no, we use our own insurance.
Now, this would be included in the front end specifications to say we are going to have our own insurance contractor. You do not have to provide. We don't want you to provide your insurance. You have no choice.
Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So we know what your premium is going into this.
Correct.
Give us
Yes.
the cost.
So the cost, and remember we talked about the two methods, and the one method gives you an even greater discount off of the standard rate. That price would be $1,269,966. That's
Do it
saying,
before you go out to bid, right? I understand.
both of them are before you go out the bid, but this one is saying, we're doing the OSIP, that's it, end of story. The second price would be the quote method, where you would compare the cost, where you wouldn't compare the insurances that the contractor is providing compared to the OSIP program. That price is $1,469,766. About $200,000 more.
Have you ever found a time when your price is more than the,
When our price is more?
yes, than the trades together?
Yes, I have found a time where the program, and this is way back when, before I was on board, that the program had rates in the $30 range. What we are able to estimate with data is that we see contractors coming in around $30 to $31. So if we're at the $21 range, we are seeing about a percentage of savings. There has been a time when we have seen, back in the day when contractors came in, but we don't feel that the price that the contractor gave at that point in time was correct. The reason I say that is because they were on a previous job and they would have had a reduction in their workers' comp insurance of 40%. So the price that they gave on a different job 2 years prior was a vast difference from the price of their insurance on another job 2 years later. It was a 40% difference. We don't feel that for some odd reason they gave a good number. I don't know why, but that was the one time that we saw an anomaly to where our price was not lower than the contractors. But again, you're not getting the same insurance.
So one of the advantages of the OSIP program, if I remember from last time, was that in a normal project, all of the contractors and the general contractors, the subcontractors come in with their own insurance. Correct.
Yes.
And by doing the OSIP, we have sort of the OSIP insurance that covers the project, which would prevent, in the event something goes wrong, the contractors sort of pointing fingers at one another and having to sort of get that sorted out and figure out whose insurance company actually is on the hook for whatever the damages are. And this, we could just go to the OSIP and the OSIP would pay it, and then on the back end, you might figure out whatever you need to figure out.
Correct. What we essentially say is that for these three types of insurances, everyone is covered under one company. Therefore, insured can sue an insured. Therefore, as long as we deem that this is a covered claim under the OSIP will respond. I could go through some claim examples if you'd like. That's the general premise. As opposed to each contractor saying, well, I didn't move that, I didn't cause that damage, it was that guy. And then you have a fighting match that could go on for years.
And then we'd have the 12-year for
Complete operations clause, yes.
for general and excess.
Correct, yes.
And that's from the date you break ground on the project?
That's from the substantial completion date.
Oh.
So 12 years from that date.
Yeah.
So once you're done, yeah.
And what do contractors normally, what do they normally say for that? Or would it depend on the policy?
I mean, it varies contractor by contractor. My firm handles contractors across the world. In the United States, we handle some of the top contractors. Therefore, we're able to say the contractors, the largest, can provide about a 5-year complete operations. Those are the big ones. You get to some of the more regional ones, they may have a 3-year complete operations.
Okay.
The subs, I don't even know if they have them.
Got it. Okay. And then you also don't have the risk of another contractor or subcontractor going out of business.
Well, that's another element that gets thrown in there as well. Is that- Well, it would be Liberty Mutual.
And if I can simplify things, bottom line is that you believe, and our administration believes, that we ultimately will save money by doing this.
I don't just think that. I believe that from the data that I have from other schools, especially in the Philadelphia region, that yes, we will.
Okay, I just want to make that clear for everyone.
Okay, so with this board's recommendation tonight, we would ask that Sean then be allowed to work with Jamie Lynch and KCBA to include the OSIP language in the front-end specifications, and that we would, the school district would ratify this at the May 16th meeting, that make it official. We will be going OSIP for the middle school project.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and the last item on the agenda this evening is a update on our transportation contract. The board did give us authorization to negotiate with First Student. We have had several meetings, and it's still in negotiation, but we wanted to share with the board the draft contract that First Student currently has in their possession that we would be recommending for the May 16th meeting, given that all the language would be approved and solicitor approved. Basically, in summary, we're looking at a 2.3% increase in the rates for the 1920 year and a 2.8% increase for each of the last 4 years. Now, we like that because from everything that we've heard, the Act 1 index is supposed to be a little bit higher than it has been the last couple of years, so it would fall right in line with the 2.8%. And there is also language in there about future bus depot situations. If the current Romano property is not available and First Student cannot find another spot that could open up for termination between both parties, and if there would be a piece of property that would be identified that the school district would turn into a bus depot, First Student would be obligated to rent that space from us at a rate of $20,500 per month, which is what they are currently paying now. And in each of the final 4 years, we could raise that rent 2.8%. We feel it's a very fair contract. We're just working out a couple of the language details right now. The contract is not available for public review, but it is attached for the board to review. So,
Good work, Dave.
Yeah, just a quick question. If you recall, when we put out the RFP and got proposals back, what was that pricing like compared to what First Student is offering?
First Student had quoted a 4.1% increase in the first year.
In that sort of RFP
Yes.
process. So this is far
Yes.
lower than that.
Presentation from
I have a question, sorry, just wait a second to find the push button. One of the things that I've asked to be on a future committee agenda, which Rosemary is putting on there, is something about starting school for secondary level schools starting later. I'm just wondering if that was to happen before this contract would be up. Just wondering if there's any restrictions with this contract that would have them not be able to participate or make this contract not.
I don't believe in reading the contract there would be any limitation as to the timing of the runs. Obviously, we would have to put some thought into how we would, if we would move the secondary runs back, what would happen to the elementary runs, because you can't run them at the same time. There's just not enough vehicles and just not enough drivers.
Sure.
But I don't think there's any language that would limit that going forward.
Okay, and if we needed to add, obviously, buses, if we were to do that and we needed to add buses, it would be an addendum to this contract, right?
That's
We would do
correct.
that. Okay, thank you.
Do you need a recommendation?
Yes, if you can give me a recommendation that we put that on the May 16th meeting.
Last Mel, where's last Mel?
I'm fine with that.
I'm
Yeah,
fine with it as well,
yeah.
so.
Okay, thank you very much. And that concludes our agenda.
Is there any comment from the public?
I'm Bill Sabey from Plymouth Township, on the environmental board. And part of the environmental board is looking at the impact of our community on the environment. So realizing that I can get here early enough when you start talking about the creation of the new middle school. Excuse me a second, I'm a little nervous. So what we've been working on is an outreach to all our communities to adopt renewable energy for all purposes, electricity and heat and transportation. So White Marsh and Plymouth have made a commitment to that in a recent resolution to get to renewable electricity by 2035 and all energy by 2050. So knowing that, we see putting in a natural gas system is not, compatible with that goal by 2050 to be off of fossil fuels for all our energy needs. So I just ask you to take another look at geothermal as a reasonable substitute. And there are examples in Montgomery County where this has been done. Talminson Township had a natural gas system, new building a few years ago, and they found it wasn't performing well. They went out to an energy consultant and said, tell us what we can do. You know, can we fix this or can we do something else? The consultant came back with a recommendation of geothermal, 9-year payback, that it would equal what they had invested, even with the geothermal field. So I'd recommend you talk to Talminson Township. The report or the evaluation was $4,000 to do that recommendation. This commitment to renewable energy is across the country. 120 communities have committed to this. 5 states, Washington, California, New Mexico, Hawaii, I forget the fifth. 70 million people represented by that population of commitments. 1 in 5 citizens will be represented by total commitments to renewable energy. So here we've got White Marsh adopting the commitment, Plymouth adopting the commitment, Conshohocken is going to adopt the commitment in mid-May. So all of your students are coming from communities that are going to be committed to renewable energy. So I really strongly recommend you take another look at geothermal instead of natural gas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris Epstein, White Marsh. Just have a couple questions. So the design for the roof here in this building, I was just a thought that it might be a good teachable moment for kids at the tech school or students at the tech school or students in our PW design classes kind of thing to maybe understand what the issue was with the overall like design concept of the building, how it didn't work and how we're moving to fix it, because it might tie into some of the engineering courses to take a little look at a real life example. I don't know, just kind of putting it out there. Anytime we can tie in things that are happening in our district to a teachable moment, I'm a proponent for that. So that was my first question. The second question is with respect to the logo at the middle school, the Patriot logo that we've had. Might be a good time to maybe tweak that or adjust it, since we have a whole new building and all new like designs going. Maybe the art students might help with that too. I mean, just an idea, kind of put it out there. Just because we've had this logo for a million years doesn't mean we move forward with it, and maybe.
Chris, I could not agree more. Last year I mentioned, I guess it was 2 years ago, when the Eagles were playing the Patriots in the Super Bowl, and how we had kids wearing Patriots things to school because they were supporting the middle school, of course, but it looked like they were supporting the New England Patriots. And I remember asking Dr. Krishna at the time, and I think Sue knew the history of it, but we had to file to get approval to use it for a certain, so we actually knew it was similar to the Patriots, yet we still did it. So I would love, I don't know what the process would be. Do you guys know what the process would be to change a logo? Talk to the solicitor. But I got your back on that.
That'd be a good time since you have a new building.
Sure,
new era,
sure.
You might have something going.
Just take the star off,
Yeah, and between the tech school and the high school, we have quite a
At least
few
take the
art students that might, want to work with that. And then the third question I have is with respect to the access road, again, at the middle school. Have we, in all of the agreements with Plymouth Township, has anything happened with agreeing to pay the cost of that road?
There's no concrete development that they're going to be paying for any of the road right now. So
And
the
it
full
is
cost
still-
of the road is in our current budget.
And that is $600,000?
Yes.
Okay, so.
But I
Jamie-
don't think that means that it cannot be negotiated, and I think those conversations are still.
I understand that, but I think as we get closer and closer and closer, the chances of it happening are gonna be nil unless we really push for it. I don't know that we're really pushing for it, but I would like you guys to. But here's my point. Jamie showed a project, business pressure slide, and some of those costs were, $325,000, we're gonna increase here and this and that. I mean, that's one chunk that could be fixed, help to pad it. So, I mean, I would just like to ask that we actively go after it. And I understand that it would increase taxes for Plymouth Township if they paid for half of the road. But it's gonna increase taxes for us, all over the whole district. And our school taxes make up 80% of our property taxes, where the township taxes are only 10% of our bill. So it's a much smaller portion of an effect on your taxes, if it is that only affecting that 10% of your Plymouth Township portion. And so, there's just a lot of things, and I just think when we look at teachers and we look at our needs and our increased enrollment and all those things, and I don't know how much the average teacher salary, if you were to hire a new teacher with the salary and benefits, what the average of that would be, whether it's 80,000, 100,000, whatever that number is, but 300,000, I mean, that covers a few new teachers or aides or janitors, like whatever we might need for.
I think our standard is, our number has always been pretty much 300,000 would be 3 new teachers, with benefits included.
Yeah, with benefits.
That's very close,
So,
yes.
Yeah.
so that's, I mean, you're talking portable classrooms potentially for Ridgeport and Plymouth. With that, we would need new teachers. So, I mean, you look at those costs, the building being $50,000 to $60,000 a year for that, portable classroom. That's 5 portable classrooms in that $300,000. So that $300,000 is nothing to sneeze at. And I just really want some headway made, or a definite yay or nay, like in writing, moving forward, with this whole contract thing. Are they or are they not going to share the costs? Are they interested? Are they not? Like, instead of me having to come back and ask time and time again. I mean, if I need to go knocking on some doors, I don't mind doing that for you guys, because it's $300,000. That's a lot of money in my book.
And I know that Dr. Christian has been having meetings with the township, and we're certainly talking to them, and those conversations are ongoing. I mean, it's certainly happening. It's not that he lives in here. It's not that the administration, is just asleep at the wheel. Or
No, I don't think
they're pushing
they are.
forward, and it's a negotiation. And Plymouth has obviously their interests, and as much as you talk about shifting the cost, I'm sure Plymouth taxpayers. They are cognizant of having to pick up half of the cost as well. So, I mean, it's their constituents in the district too, and so it's a question of burden sharing, but those negotiations are going on still.
It's not only that, if we pay the $600,000 now, we still have to pay for new teachers and new staff, and our costs are gonna exponentially go up, with just the growth of the district, so.
Will they be using it as much as we do? We're going to use it 50% of the time?
I'm sure they would use it. They're excited about the road being there. Whether they're going to pay us cash for it.
No, I'm not asking. I'm asking, are they using it as much as we would use it?
Yeah. No, probably not as much, because we're going to use it every day for the buses to come in
That's what I
that way.
mean, okay. It's a
But
necessity
they're
for us.
emergency vehicles. They're looking at salt deliveries and.
So if in other words, if there's a fire, we have to go out there, or a
Right,
police.
correct,
If it's
absolutely.
not something they use every single morning and every single night, that is, every single afternoon, that's what the school district is using it for. So our use sounds like it's going to be greater than.
Yeah,
it wouldn't
yes.
be 50-50.
Yeah, right, no, I get that.
Okay, I mean,
But some-
50-50 doesn't make sense to me, because they're
No.
not going to need it like we need it.
And-
But
and-
they asked KCBA to come to us and ask to have that access road back in June a year ago. So I'm just putting it out there, they obviously want it, they're obviously gonna use it. In my opinion, there should be some portion that they would contribute to it, whether it's upfront with the construction of it or moving forward with the maintenance of it. Because the maintenance of that road's not gonna be cheap either. So, and if it's there, they will use it. They will use it. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional public comment? We will call this meeting to a close. Thank you.